close enough where there was a pattern.
But you did tell your mom about Lee.
I did not.
That music. Don't be influenced by the music, please. Now, later on in the
He says, don't be influenced by the music. Yeah, I hate these music for like these documentaries and stuff. Like, oh my God. I wish it would just take out the music and just interview the person and just do it without the fucking music to influence you.
series, Casey Anthony refers to a comment her father made at Kaylee's funeral and goes on to suggest that her father is a pedophile.
Kaylee Marie Anthony, who not only meant the world to me, but meant the world to my family, and so many of you that never got a chance to actually hug her.
So before I watched the documentary, someone in my chat did mention that George Anthony did give a really weird speech at Kaylee's funeral. I do think the speech was really weird, but I don't think it was enough to give me red flags of like, oh, this guy's like a P word.
Smell her hair. Smell the sweet sweat when she came in from outside.
Are you
to hear her?
And I also don't know if I believe that this is the first time she's reacting to this, because I feel like her reaction was it seemed very contrived. I mean, again, this is my opinion. It seems very contrived, very overblown. And I think that she's had 10 plus years to concoct a new story. And it's possible that she started looking back on maybe like videos like this, maybe certain evidence, and she started creating a narrative based around all this to make it look like it all fits together. But again, this is like my opinion. And there were some parts where I thought she was like maybe truthful, but I feel like most of the time it was just acting, and it was just her just continuing. She's just still lying, you know? She's literally someone who's been prosecuted for lying because she lied to the cops. But yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of opinions on this, but I'll shut up.
Call me JoJo.
I'll shut up. Did the brother there? Well, they still maintain that they did not do it. But the brother, the father, have they given an interview after this documentary? Not to my knowledge.
I missed that.
Oh, Rain, don't worry. I will get into that as well. There were a lot of inconsistencies in her story. Like I said, I'm going to rewatch it. I'm going to take my notes, and then we'll talk with you guys. But I do want to, before I give my full conclusion, though, I do want to rewatch parts of the trial.
Kiss on the cheek. That special hug that I tell everyone, it's so great to get a hug from someone, but to get a hug from a small child, that gives me energy like you couldn't imagine.
Also, remember, this is a funeral. Some people say some weird shit after someone's passed away, you know, like when they're grieving. This is also like, obviously, the fucking thing was, I think it was televised, wasn't it? He had like an audience, like could be nervousness. I think it came off as really weird, but I feel like there's a lot of factors that could have led up to that. But I mean, he could be one. It's just that I think I don't know. I also don't believe this display that she's giving us right now. Aw, thanks, Raven. Yeah, like the video. Sorry, I'm talking over.
That's not normal. Nothing about that is normal. You're outright telling the world that you're a pedophile.
Oh, she doesn't have a relationship with her family. However, at the end of the documentary, she was like, she kept trying to get Kaylee's remains back, and her mom wouldn't let her. I'm like, good. Don't give it to her.
Now, in other parts of the docu-series, if you watch it, I binged it, I told you I did it last week, there's sort of this overall theme throughout, and really coming through the words of Casey Anthony herself, that what really happened to her daughter was Casey fell asleep, and then her father shows up with little Kaylee and says, don't worry, everything will be all right, and then disappears with her, and then she's found dead in the woods. And then her and her investigator talk about, he must have smothered her. Very possible. And he smothered her after he's trying to molest her as well, because, as she's accusing him, he's a pedophile. So with that in mind, a lot of people are like, this is outrageous. You got to do something about it. Can't you do something about this, George? So if it's not true, and I'm starting with this premise, that those allegations are not true, that George Anthony didn't molest and murder his granddaughter, George Anthony didn't molest and rape his daughter, if those things are not true, could George Anthony sue his daughter, Casey Anthony, for defamation? So we were talking about this, and I'm like, well, there's only one way to find out. Do we know anyone who knows anything about defamation cases? Is there someone out there, and we're like, where? We need somebody, we need a heavy hitter. We need like someone who
All right, get Ben Chu on the case. Get Ben Chu.
Who could win a big case like that? You know who I'm talking about. Joining me tonight, Washington, D.C., trial attorney, partner with Brown Rudnick, LLP, and the lead attorney who represented Johnny Depp during his successful...
Oh, she doesn't take responsibility for any of it. She blames it all on her family.
...defamation case. Ben Chu back with us. Ben, great to see you.
Great to see you, Vinny. Thank you for having me on again.
All right, so I want to walk through this whole process with you because and I'm serious about this potential, because a lot of people are talking about a potential suit here. If someone like George Anthony was going to bring a lawsuit like this, he'd have to go see an attorney like you. How does an attorney who represents people claiming defamation, how do you sort of vet the case? Like, what makes you take the case versus not take a case like this? What would a defamation attorney, what would the meeting be like with the client? What would you discuss, and what would be some of the factors that you would take into account here?
Well, Vinny, as you know, and you're assuming truth, but truth is always a defense in any defamation case. So due diligence on that point, i.e. whether the allegations are true, has to be done, and has to be done extensively, more so than in a general commercial case, because the attorney has to be as sure as he or she can be that the allegations are false before he would take the case or advise the client to proceed. And then you go on to other factors we can discuss.
Go ahead. What are some of the other factors you're going to take a look at there?
Yeah, tell us, Ben.
Well, the other factors you would discuss are whether these are allegations of fact or allegations of opinion, which
no, she's not in prison.
As you know, allegations of opinion are not actionable. In this case, I think you clear that hurdle, because the accusation of being a pederast, it's a pretty clear allegation. It's an allegation of a crime, and it's a crime so heinous in our society, or really any society, that it is considered defamation per se. So the damages to the plaintiff, again, under your hypothesis, assuming the falsity of the allegations, this is a particularly heightened form of defamation per se. But there's another factor I think you're going to get at, and I shouldn't anticipate your questions because I'm not that smart. But another factor you always consider, and it was relevant in the Depp case as well, is you consider whether the potential defendant, as a practical matter, would have the means to satisfy any judgment.
So let me ask you this. Before we get to the money aspect of it, do you ever look at the person making the statement? So say, hypothetically, the person is a convicted liar, right? Someone who's an admitted liar.
Literally a convicted liar.
Someone who made an entire documentary talking about how she...
Oh, okay, so TLDR-ish, she was on trial for the disappearance of her daughter. I think they later did find the remains of her daughter, maybe before she was in trial. I think like 6 months after the search, they found the remains. She was arrested for a second time, and she went through trial. And because, oh man, there was like, it was hard to pin that it was her who did it, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like the jury gave her way too much benefit of the doubt. I think it was really clear and cut that she effing did it, you know? But there were some issues, like there was duct tape on the little girl, but there was no DNA on the duct tape. I think her team introduced the possibility of the daughter drowning. But, dude, I think no matter what, she should have got fucking convicted. But, yeah, we'll watch some of the segments of the trial. But, yeah, there's a lot that went down. Like, a lot of people thought she was guilty. However, when the trial actually happened, her defense team was able to plant enough doubt in the minds of the jury. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really weird too that they only talked for about like 12 or 13 hours before it decided for a not guilty verdict. But they decided to plant it on the dad and say that she drowned, and then like say that she was, you know, a victim of abuse by her dad and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, just so much going on. But it's frustrating and saddening that a grandfather trying to memorialize his innocent grandchild after death has been twisted into something perverted like that. Yeah, like, I mean, I thought it sounded weird, but like not weird to the point where I was like, oh my God, this guy's a P word. I was just like, it's a little weird, but you know, like I said, when people are grieving, you know, you don't know how they act. They act very differently, right? Sometimes. Also, he had an audience there. I don't know if he's used to talking in front of like a lot of people. Like, he could have been really nervous. Like, the delivery was really weird in my opinion, but I don't know. Was that like a sealed and shut? Like, oh my God, he's a P word. No, not really.
Lied, someone who was convicted in court of lying. Does that come into play as well in evaluating the strength of your case if you're accusing a convicted liar of defamation?
Absolutely, Vinny, and I should have said that you consider the credibility and the record of both the plaintiff and the defendant. And in this case, as you point out, though she was acquitted of the murder back in 2011, she was convicted of 4 counts.
God, and people just hate her smug face too.
Of giving false information to law enforcement. And as a matter, you know, although some statements were made by her counsel, it's very clear that she changed her story about how Kaylee, you know, came to be murdered. It's outrageous.
Changed it a bunch of times. So explain to folks how this would go down. We all watched Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard. So if it's George Anthony versus Casey Anthony, we'll talk about Peacock in a moment. But if it's George Anthony versus Casey Anthony facing off, she'd have to testify. And if she's accusing him of being responsible for the death of her daughter, can you put her on the stand and question her about her role potentially in the death of her daughter?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You would put her on in deposition, of course, before you put her on a trial, and you would walk her through every false statement that she's made, every
Dude, I hope they have a defamation trial. Holy shit. Put her on the stand because she didn't testify in her own murder trial.
Contradictory statement. She could always take the 5th.
Wait, let me ask you about that. Can she take the 5th if she's been criminally acquitted of the murder?
That's as always, you ask the best question. And if she faces if any further charge would constitute double jeopardy, then George's lawyer could say there's that she's not entitled to take the 5th, and that would be resolved by the judge. But I think George's lawyer would have a very strong argument that the 5th would not be available to her, unless I suppose she could make a creative argument about potential perjury convictions, new perjury convictions. But in any event, however she tries to get unwound from that particular axle, I think you would have all of that in the form of testimony. And I think she would just be in a very, very difficult place to be a defendant in a defamation case. And
my belief, that case would be perhaps even more revealing than the criminal trial was.
Yes, it would, because their discovery in the civil context, as you know, is a very broad standard. Anything reasonably calculated to lead to the discovery of admissible evidence. And because these particular defamatory statements go right to the heart of what happened to Kaylee and what allegedly happened.
I'm also very confused because she's kind of like fucked off in the public eye for over 10 plus years. Why did she agree to be a part of this documentary? Why resurrect all this? Does she just want to have a normal life? Does she want to make friends, be in the public eye? Like, why is she doing all this?
Happened to Casey,
she need money?
All of this would be fair game. This would be a disaster for Casey Anthony. And, opening up this can of worms by doing this docuseries really would not have been something any attorney would have advised.
Yeah, and the one question that has been answered there, I haven't heard it anywhere, is whether or not she got paid. I'm presuming there was some payment either for her interviews, her participation, or some pictures or whatever that she may have provided. But I don't know. She may not have been paid for the whole thing.
Yeah, I think Peacock said that they weren't paying her, but someone else brought up that, like, it's possible she could have been paid for other things.
All right, so let's get back to that other statement where you were talking about money, which is,
for being involved in this,
if an attorney's going to take a case, there's got to be, some way to satisfy a potential judgment. I don't know if she...
Like, did she really think this docuseries was going to flip the minds of the people and automatically make her look innocent? I don't know. I feel like, if anything, I feel like there's more negative publicity surrounding it.
Has 2 nickels to rub together. She may have a few dollars here and there, but nothing substantial. But this was a docuseries that was produced by someone. It was placed onto a streaming service. If, and again, this is the big if these statements are not true, would they be potential defendants in the case as well? Would it be, who could be on the hook?
Do you think she's a narcissist?
Yes, that's where you would probably go. And again, assuming that she is judgment-proof, which is an assumption, but not.
I know for sure she's a compulsive liar, but I don't know if she's a narcissist. I have to look into that some more, I guess.
Not an unreasonable one,
Money
unless
period.
she was paid a lot for this docuseries. Then I think you would have to look for a deep pocket, and the deep pocket could be the producers of the docuseries.
Yeah, because to me, I'm like, damn, is she a narcissist or is she just a dumb bitch?
Who could be brought in as defendants. Publications, producers of these things are brought in all the time. Standards are somewhat different, but yes, I think if you were to proceed on behalf of George, I think you would have to advise George that you would want to be looking potentially at the producers of the docuseries as potential defendants.
Yeah, and this is a pipe dream of mine, but I don't think it'll happen, that if the case is brought, that it's just George versus Casey, and he's doing it not so much for the money, but to clear his name, and that would take an incredible sacrifice by attorneys to do that for like free, pretty much, because I don't think...
She also calls her dad out, and during an interview he did after a car accident, where the dad was just like, oh, I just need to ask her for her forgiveness. I need her forgiveness. But he wouldn't say what for. And then Casey Anthony used that and tried to use it as an admission of guilt that he did something wrong to her. But again, this guy was in a very horrible car accident, and he had like fucking like rods or something that was like attached to his head. I'm like, dude, he could just be like fucked up. Like,
again, she doesn't have any money. But incredible insight on...
I feel like she was reaching so hard here.
This Friday night. Ben Chu, folks, you know him very well, and we thank you so much for joining us and clarifying this situation for us. Have a great night, Ben.
Thanks, Vinny. Pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
See ya, Ben.